Turn it on. Oh, yeah, that'll be it. Hello, everyone. There's people here, which is amazing. Thank you very much. You may know I'm not Ali Thornton, who was supposed to be hosting. So you now have the problem of two people from York. So we'll try not to go off on tangents about Toff's nightclub, Stone Roses bar, where one of us may have been on Saturday. Yep, him, not me. So I will try and cover for Ali the best I can. So we are very happy to be joined by Luke Beddows. There's his big picture. Luke has written for top shows like Britain's Got Talent and was the creator and writer of Class Dismissed, which won a BAFTA, I believe. Really? That is the best start ever. Well done.
Mike wasn't on. There we go. I'm thinking when I wrote for CBBC, you guys might have been watching it, like between 2011, 2014. What, the actor? Richard David Kane, I think his name is in Horrible Histories. Hacker, the dog, I've worked with a lot.
Yeah.
Horrible Histories. Tracy Beaker, then The Dumping Ground.
This is the most interactive show ever. I love it. So as we say, Luke's been on some fantastic shows. We're going to have a quick look at his writing show reel, if that's all right. And we're right in the middle of the way.
Might be a lot of kids
Say hello,
stuff.
Chuck. Hello, Chuck.
He's good, isn't he? Yeah.
My friend Chuck here is very clever. So, Chuck, I'd like to hear you say, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. So would I.
I know what you're all thinking. The Terminator let himself go a bit.
Once upon a time, Jessica's farm, there were lots of animals who brought such a charm. But instead of a sheep, a cow, a horse, a hen, there were animals there that often escaped their pen. Such a dangerous dog if he entered would bite.
Is that her?
No show! Last Sunday was the Oscars, so everyone was back to reporting on the dresses, the parties, and the goodie bag. This year, the free gifts included the deeds for a plot of land in Queensland, Australia. You see, so much for the idea that the Oscars are too woke. This year's gifts actually included some imperialism in a bag.
My careers advisor once told me I'd amount to nothing. But look at me now, Dad. Not Dad, careers advisor. Why do kids want to be teachers? Do you think they just want to return the favour and dish out the detentions themselves?
I don't think it's that.
Pressure is rising all the time. It's all getting too much for me. I can't think straight. There's too much to do. Too much on my plate.
Yeah, my exams are looming. I'm not behaving myself. The head teacher is fuming.
Deadlines to meet. I'm rushed off my feet. There's marking to be done and I'm feeling the heat.
Brilliant stuff. So I thought we'd kick off if you could let us know a little about how you got into TV.
Yeah, so the long version or the short version?
Let's do the long.
Long version.
I talk quick.
Okay. So after I did broadcast journalism at the University of Lincoln, and then from that I went to work at Radio York and Radio Leeds as a broadcast assistant, basically just answering phones on the Late Show with old grannies or whatever, making cups of tea and things. And then from that, I wasn't staff, but there's a thing called Hot Shoes at the BBC where you can apply to do like a placement at somewhere totally different to what you're in. So I was with a sports show doing the rugby lines and things. And then there was a Hot Shoes at CBBC down in London, and it's for 2 weeks. And I couldn't apply because I was staff. So I kind of lied and said I was staff, or at least found a way in a little bit. I'm allowed to say that. I'm allowed to say you do what you need to do to get in. And I just managed to get 2 weeks down in London, where I went down and worked with Ian Sterling, the Love Island guy, and Hacker. I did 2 weeks with them, and then they were moving up to Media City that summer, basically, in 2011. So they offered me a researcher job there, and then that's how I got into TV from there, basically. So a bit of radio, a bit of sport, and then took that opportunity to go and do some shadowing, some work experience. Kind of got into it from there. You move around then once you're in, basically.
Cool, thank you. Can you give us a kind of a breakdown of some of the shows you've worked on, written, produced?
Yeah, so when I was researching at CBBC, I did Hacker Time, Sam and Mark's Big Friday Wind-Up, like a big prank show. School of Silence was like a weird show we did. Then I did all the links in the what we used to call the broom cupboard, all the links in between the shows with like Ian and Hacker, Yonko and Dodge the dog. We'd write all the links in between the shows. And then after that, after I went in to teach for a bit and I wrote Class Dismissed, that's where we wrote Class Dismissed. Me and my co-writers were working at the BBC at the time, and we thought we'd be more, they seemed to just get in freelance writers all the time. We were like, well, we weren't freelance writers. We like worked in the building. So we thought we'd be more attractive as writers if we weren't there almost. So I just decided to leave my job and go and teach. And I thought give me the best opportunity to be more, Luke Beddows, the freelance writer, rather than Luke Beddows, the researcher at CBBC. So that's when we left and we wrote Class Dismissed, which went on to win a BAFTA, children's BAFTA. But we beat Horrible Histories, which everyone knows Horrible Histories is the greatest show. That's the only time they've been beat in the last like 6 or 7 years. So we wrote Class Dismissed then. And then since then, what about Britain's Got Talent? I mean, yeah, heartbreak for you all. It's not all just as organic as you think. A lot of it is very heavily produced. So I've written a lot of the acts on there. Like Viggo Venn, who won last year, I saw him in a comedy club in London, and I like approached him and helped him write his kind of routine. And he won, which was absolutely mental because we thought he was just going to get buzzed off, and then he won £250,000, and it will be performed in front of the King in a few months' time. Then I did the Now Show on Radio 4. I've done a couple of bits for them. Yeah, that's about it, really. There'll be other things along the way. Crackerjack, when it returned, which was a show back in the 80s, but it got brought back with Sam and Mark. I did a few sketches for that. But I'm always trying to write more. I'd love to write the best thing ever. I'd love to write an adult sitcom. I've got stuff in the works, but it's hard. You just need to have stuff written. If there's any aspiring writers, I think it's just good to have material in your arsenal. So if someone comes looking for you, it's like, well, what's your style? And then you have that ready to go. But yeah, written on a lot of those shows, which is pretty cool. All kind of researched and produced on them. I've had a plethora of roles really on different things. My writing tends to be more freelance than in a production kind of area. I'm more producer or assistant producer, really.
And two things. When you win a BAFTA, do you feel like you get given a BAFTA?
You don't. Well, weirdly, because the BBC produced that show, they got to keep the one BAFTA. You can buy one. If you win one, you can buy one for £250, which at the time I was skint. I was like, absolutely nowhere. But I'm not skint now, but I think that's actually quite cheap. I think it's like a replica of it. But no, I don't have the BAFTA in my toilet. It's literally just on my CV. And every email I send to anybody ever, I say BAFTA winner and don't mention the children's BAFTA thing. Because it sounds like a real BAFTA then. Be ambiguous, I'm a BAFTA winner, but it's a children's BAFTA. I wish it was a big BAFTA.
Yeah. Could you just now go back and order a BAFTA?
I don't know, actually.
You should give that a shot.
Retrospectively, yeah. Posthumously. Not posthumously, I'm not dead. I don't know. Maybe I should. I'll look into it though. Because I've script to give her £250, I think now. Yeah, that was a great moment. Yeah, we didn't expect it, and we didn't get to go as the writers. This is tragic, man. When we were writing it, the BBC bought the idea of us for £500, which never do. Advice to you: if you have a great idea for a TV show, do not sell it for £500 because you could make more than that. So we sold it like Mr. Tumble. Does anyone know Mr. Tumble? Like CBeebies and stuff. So famously, he like sold the idea for it's like Gigglebeers, Mr. Tumble, Justin's House. That's the other one. He like sold the idea. I shouldn't probably be telling you this, but apparently he's a really awful man as well. So, but he sold the idea really on to BBC, and then he was really gutted because obviously it's like the biggest bloody show ever now, and he could have like made loads of money. But yeah, the BBC bought the idea of us for £500, and they were like, oh, you don't want to be like some other guys who demand a table at BAFTA, who ask for so much more money. We were like, oh yeah, look at them guys. And we wished we were those guys. We have a show now that Cartoon Network are kind of interested in, and they've made some demands, and we've gone back with our agents and just been like, no, we've been like really harsh with it and really like anal about what we want, because we're like, it's obviously a good idea. So we've got to have confidence in the idea. Whereas in your early careers, if you get something away, you might just be like, take it or whatever. And we kind of got excited, but then it might not have got away. So yeah.
And the one that won Britain's Got Talent, you not get a cut of that either?
No, that's really bad actually, because also I didn't go. I'm not on this series either because they didn't want to pay me enough, and I was like, I won the show. Like I won. You cast contestants and then you pass them on to another team, and then you leave in January before it even goes into filming. I got seconds the year before, and I got the first last year. But you get absolutely no. I've messaged him since and be like, if you get a show on telly, I want a cut. He's blanked me. So no, you don't get a cut of the winner. You don't get anything from it. You get a bit of kudos from the management, but they didn't even want to raise my wage by 25 quid a week. And I was like, I found the winner here, but nothing for that. Nothing.
So BAFTA winner, worked with Hacker
Children's
T.
BAFTA. Yeah, Hacker T,
Don't have to
Innocent
say-
Men.
It's a BAFTA, mate. It's a BAFTA.
Innocent Men, Normal Men, if we all
So
know that.
what's the highlight of your career so far?
BAFTA would be the kind of boring answer, I suppose. Viggo winning last year was absolutely mad. I don't know. The highlight was probably, did anybody see Hacker Time when it was on? Was the chat show with Hacker, and they had like, yeah, that was a really fun show. We had like, it was just a chat show with a dog. So they've been trying to get on prime time ever since for the last 10 years. Phil has the puppeteer. We had like Martin Lewis on and Robbie Savage and like bigger, like Tracy Beaker was on. What's her name? Danny Harmer. And you just film for like 4 hours with them as a chat show. And I think because those few months of filming that show were so fun, like we did like mini dramas within it as well, where we went away and filmed in like a castle, or we filmed at like this Wild Wild West set down south, which has been used for big films like Avengers and stuff as well. Going away and filming those were really fun. So those, and it was a really small team. It was kind of about 5 or 6 people that made that show. Really low budget. It was like 25 grand an episode, which is not that much. Them few months, and because it was Hacker, we just got away with so much weird stuff. We showed the first puppet nudity on television. We showed a puppet's bum, which is pretty cool. I know this sounds so silly, but when you're like in your mid-20s going and doing a show like that, which is just so fun to do. Our exec producer was really fun. Nothing was off the table. We did those songs with Ore Aduba, the 4:15 o'clock club, which spoofed like a CBC show at the time. So I got to write some rap songs, which I was like, yeah, skinny little white boy writing some Tupac and Biggie. I was like, this is mint. So that was probably the highlight of my career, was doing that show. And I'll always say that because that's just the most fun. Even doing Britain's Got Talent, which has millions more viewers, doing kids telly was really fun. And I might not be the same anymore, but I hope it is. If you can ever get into kids telly, it's a really nice place to work and it's really fun. So if you could get into it, well fun.
And think about Class Dismissed. What was the process of creating, writing, pitching it, and getting on air? Was it long?
To get it on air and to get it commissioned, yes, was pretty long. In the first instance, we just wrote a pilot. Like if you're ever going to pitch an idea, I always say you really need to have a treatment, which is just like a 1-page doc. Do it on Canva or on Word, but Canva's I'm terrible at graphics, and my graphic designer mate was like, you've all heard of Canva, right? It's like elevated PowerPoint, but it's free to use. Get a treatment, a 1-page doc. They call it a lift pitch. Like if you got into a lift with a commissioner, they want you to sell that idea in like 10 seconds. So let's take like Succession, the greatest show of the last year, in my opinion. What's the headline? That would be like a warring family feuding over the right to, take the crown of their dad or whatever. I would have a pilot and a treatment ready. So we wrote a pilot, about a 25-minute pilot on cell text time, but right on Final Draft or even in Google Docs, just put it in script format. We wrote the pilot, we wrote the treatment, and then we were still in the BBC at the time, or at least we knew the commissioner, Cheryl Taylor, who'd commissioned Black Books in the past, which is comedy on Channel 4. And we kind of worked our way in and got it, just put it on a desk with a muffin. We're like, here's a script, have a read of it. We sold it on being very cheap because we knew they filmed The Dumping Ground, which is the Tracy Beaker spin-off, and the 4 o'clock club was that rap show with Doc Brown. They filmed in a school in the north of England, so we knew they had a set, and they filmed it in summer. And it was the Little Britain model, a Little Brit. Not that you can maybe say that anymore, Little Britain, but they had, obviously, Williams and Matt Lucas played multiple characters, so therefore cheaper. We were like, this is going to be cheap to make, have an actor playing several characters. You can film it in that school, and it's funny. It's a cheap sketch comedy. It was getting into the time where what do you call it where you chop up content now and put it in short form? There's a word for it, isn't there? Doesn't it? Tell me. You know, it's like, oh, this is chop-upable. That's definitely not the word. But it's like, it's a half an hour show, but you could do 1 minute 30 because our attention spans are now at -5 seconds. We're like, so you can chop up the sketches and put them on shorts and stuff. So if like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, if you just wanted to watch all Jake's sketches, you can go on YouTube now and just type it, watch all his sketches. We were like, you could chop this up and sell it that way. And then we just put it in front of Cheryl, and then she liked it. And then we sold the idea for £500, too cheap. And then it just goes from there. Then it goes into producers' hands. They film a pilot. Then they'll want you to develop it a little bit more. And then you write a full series then. And then more writers came on board, which we didn't have a choice about, which we were annoyed about. But then it had kind of 5-6 series where it got worse. But we were kind of sacked off it by then, got quite vicious. But it takes a while. Like this Cartoon Network show we're working on at the moment, it's a sketch show again about monsters in the real world. So one of your lecturers might be like a Cyclops, and he's he's really bad at teaching, but you're all accepting of him because in a more modern progressive world, we're inclusive of everyone. So we're now gone so far, we're accepting of like witches and Cyclops, a bit like what we do in the Shadows, but maybe for kids. So, but now so we've had a meeting, a Cartoon Network. We've got to develop it a bit more. Then we need to write maybe 52 episodes. So that's when maybe I can take 6 months off to write it. But that could take ages because it's on budgets and on the tax year, April to April. It's all about budgets. And you know this about going around to find independent production companies who will all pool in for the money. Sometimes nowadays it's not just like whatever. Screen Yorkshire might just not make some on their own. They'll need a pot of money. They'll need help from other companies to come in on. So it's a long process. And when I listen to podcasts I listen to Adam Buxton podcasts, he has big writers on. When you hear about, I don't know, like Michaela Cole making I May Destroy You, or Coogan and the Gibbons making the Partridge stuff, it can take years and years. So yes, it's a long, so that's why having another job, you need other jobs unless you're kind of a fully booked up writer. That's just how it is. It takes a long time. It can be very frustrating. But if you get something out of it eventually, great.
Since you're incredibly honest,
very honest. I'll answer any question of stuff in the industry.
Get ready for the end.
Yeah.
How does the payment work for being a writer? Is there like installments? It's just
with sketch and sitcom writing, there's different things. So sitcoms are like situational comedies where there's kind of more character arcs and development of storylines. Sketches would just be like boom, 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 sketch. But there's been a bit of a mix now because, again, I always say Brooklyn Nine-Nine because it's one of my favorites from across the pond, I'd say. But even like Big Mouth, if people watch that now on Netflix, an animated comedy, you could take up little bits of them and they could be sketches on their own, and they are, but there's kind of a narrative throughout. Sketch comedy pays less. I would say I'm on about 125 quid a minute, but that's per minute of script. It's about 2 pages of writing. So if you do 10 pages, what's that? 1,200 quid. Situational comedy might pay a bit more, like maybe 175, 200. But then I don't know what like Succession or Breaking Bad and Walking Dead, I don't know what they would be on. Because the American writers have the strikes and stuff. Like we in England, we don't have unions, so you can get shat on basically. But in America, they have these, and I think they get paid really well over there. But I can only talk for that. You get paid per minute unless you got bought out. But yeah, you get paid per minute of a script. That's that's how I demand to be paid. Ask to be paid. But you might get bought out with your ideas. So recently we got told to develop this cartoon we're working at the moment. But it was the production company Lion TV, who do Horrible Histories, asked us to develop it. And they gave us like $3,000 to develop it. And that we spent some money to go away on an Airbnb in the Cotswolds and did a few days on it, which you might think that's quite a lot. And maybe it is, just we demanded a little bit more. It just fluctuates. You'd need to be paid a lot more and be working a lot more. I don't know, what's been big recently? What are we all watching comedy-wise? What do we watch comedy? Someone name a comedy that they watch, if anybody watches comedy. Always Sunny in Philadelphia, right? So I'd imagine guys like series, whatever, they've had loads, haven't they? 10, 12 series, I don't know. Like when Friends got to the point where even the actors were being paid £1 million per episode. That's a fact. you would have thought the writers, and like the Simpsons writers now, they must be demanding because it's such a big show. I wouldn't even want to put an Always Sunny. The lads on that and then the lads who write on it will be getting paid loads. But I wouldn't have a clue what. I can only go on what we're being paid on British kids and adult TV. Then Britain's Got Talent and stuff. I was an assistant producer and I was writing for them and getting paid nothing. So I was getting paid my weekly wage, which was about 750 quid a week. But they weren't paying me extra to write. So I was definitely getting underpaid because I was writing 10 minutes of script. And so that should have really been 125 quid a minute, but they were paying me my weekly wage. So they were doing me over there, basically. Yeah.
That's very honest. Thank you.
Yeah.
What is the hardest part of being a writer?
Writing. I'd say the constant, and if there's journalists, I suppose, and in any job really, it's just the constant imposter syndrome, I find. And I want to write Succession. I want to write Alan Patrick. I want to write The Office. I want to write big things. But you can't say to yourself you're never gonna, because my wife would tell me to manifest it. You might do one day. And not a lot of people have won a BAFTA. So I'm like, okay, I've done something, I've achieved. But I would just say rejection's hard, really hard. Even finding a job to be rejected is hard. But I just say actually doing it and getting off your ass and doing it and getting those. But the more you do it, the more, again, I'm going back to having an arsenal of scripts. So if you're doing journalism, having a show reel, you need to have a show reel ready. You need to have stuff that represents you instead of just your CV and the cover letter. Let's go, well, what's the content you've got that best represents you? And it's not just a CV and a cover letter written by AI. It's like you need to have something that's unique to you. So it's hard. I still want to be a full-time writer. I'm not. I'm working in telly, which I'm really lucky to do, especially in today's climate. But in between contracts, I have to go back to teaching and things. So it's just the actual concept of writing and thinking it's rubbish. It's just that thing that, oh God, this isn't very good. But then to some people, it might be brilliant. It's just doing it. It's really hard, really hard. I was really motivated at uni to do stuff, but I need deadlines as well. I prefer deadlines. Like dissertation was not, I wrote it the night before. I wrote it across the year, but I certainly wrote a lot of it the night before. I love deadlines, but if you're not working on a show and you don't have a commission, you're not working to any deadline. You're just sending off scripts. Like you having deadlines at uni now is great because once you get out and you're trying to make some of yourself, it's hard to not have any deadlines. I love it when I've got some development work and they're like, can it be in next Wednesday? I'm like, yes, brilliant, and it'll be really good. So not having deadlines to work towards and being proactive is hard, really hard. And if you've not had anything away for a while, it can be really demotivating. So you've just got to have eyes in the fire, work your contacts, keep doing what you love to do, but then also have a day job and maybe try and get into a day job that might help you get into your dream job, I suppose. Like me be working in telly, obviously I've got some contacts. I'm about to start January on Saturday Night Takeaway with Ant and Dec, and I know they have a writer, Andy Milligan, who writes all their stuff. And no matter what you think of Ant and Dec, the little sketches in I'm a Celeb are really funny because they're like really stupid. And I was like, my dream would be to write for Ant and Dec. Like, what a job. He's contracted just to write silly, slapsticky jokes. So I'm just like, God, I'm 35, but maybe I just need to ask to shadow, like even at 35, be asking to do work experience and be like, oh, can I come in the room and just watch you write with Ant and Dec? But maybe just it's there for me to use that resource to just go in and do it. So yeah, the hardest bit about writing is just being proactive enough to write and get some away, because not that you might never do, because that's very negative thinking, but you might not get away with something you want to do. I want to write something as good as The Office or The Day Today, or Big Train, but it will happen. I was going to say it might never happen, but it will happen, guys. Will happen.
Brilliant. You have an agent?
No, I don't.
You
now.
don't know. I was
them
going to
off.
say, do you need them? And now I know the answer.
So I did have an agent, but if anyone's seen Extras and Darren Lamb, played by Stephen Merchant in Extras, they got to the point where I was getting work for them. They were like, oh yeah, so even though we've not done anything to get this, can we take our 17.5%? And I was like, yeah, sure, of course you can. So I sacked her off because they weren't that big an agent, but I just basically kind of like scattergunned a lot of agents. I first went to agents I'd love to work with, of respected writers and actors. Then when none of them got back to me, I went a level down to agents that might have me. It was in order to get one, I think it's good to have some on the table, because it's obviously like, oh, there could be some money here for us. But my agent wasn't very good. They weren't getting me in the rooms I wanted to be in. They weren't getting me that much work. So I sacked them off. And then I've got more work on my own. So what was the question? Is it good to have one?
Do you need one? I think we know. No.
Well, a lot of companies will, like Channel 4 IT, will only take solicited scripts, which solicited means it comes through an agent because you're a nobody. So it's like, if you come through Avalon or whoever, then they'll be like, oh, well, if it's a solicited script, Luke must be a good writer because he's got representation. So it depends. If it's probably a decent agent and they're pushing you enough, yes, it's probably good to have one. I've just kind of, my 2 co-writers have separate agents and they're representing me for this script. So they can be good of all the negotiation, all the contract stuff, which I have no clue about and would never read anything. So yes, in terms of that, to be protected, absolutely. And maybe when we Class Dismiss came around and we had agents because we didn't at the time, we wouldn't have been shot on for 500 quid. That might have been £5,000, which it probably should have been, by the way. So it would have been good then. But it's hard to get one because they go for established people. But if you're not established because you don't have an agent, how do you get one? That's the difficulty. It's just, how do you get over the line? So do you go with a low-level agent who might not do anything for you, like who I had, Ebden Management? Or do you try and get a bigger one? So I nearly got one at the moment because with Hatch Talent, they had a really John Pointing who was in Big Boys on Channel 4, and he's been in some really good stuff and he writes some good stuff, and Plebs he was in as well. And they offered me a contract. But then I was like, are they just wanting me because I might have 52 episodes of Cartoon Network on the table? And I was a bit like, which was my I said, listen, I've got some on the table. They might want 52 episodes. I might earn 25 grand here over 6 months. I sold that to them anyway, but then I started to think, but maybe they're just going to take a cut of it, and I've kind of got it myself already, so do I need them? So it's still on the table, but I turned them down. So it's hard to answer that because it's good in certain aspects, but I've had my fingers burnt with one when they didn't get anything for me in about 1.5 years and then took some money off me because I got something for them. So maybe I still want one that could represent me, yes, because I've got a good back catalogue of work. But there's no accounting for what you can get on your own, contacts you can get. My one advice coming out of this is going to be in tele jobs or in writing jobs is just work your contacts. You can get a job from who you know. I've been asked for my degree once in my career and then never again. Not the playing it down because uni was the best years of my life, and to get in I needed it. But then I've never been again asked for my degree. It's about who I know, who's worked with me in the past. Oh, Luke's an all right guy. Yep, get him in. It's about building those contacts. Knowing journalism is so important. So maybe the agent can push you into certain realms, yes, but I don't think it's the be all and end all, certainly.
That's great. Actually, you just touched on sort of tips there. What would your top tips be for the students here on how to get into TV?
So go and be like a runner or a broadcast assistant first, unless you're lucky enough to go in and be a researcher or an assistant producer first. But that's more unlikely, to be honest. It's to go in and do, I mean, it's less demeaning now because it's maybe quite harsh to do that in the modern world. You probably can't, but you'll still be asked to go into jobs and make cups of tea, schmooze a little bit. So I'd say get in any way you can to be a runner or a broadcast assistant, answering the phones. You might have to go and do some free work and work a normal job at the same time. So I was doing Radio Leeds and Radio York, but I was also working at a bar in York and just driving between the two and have another job anyway to fund life. So I would just try and get in there and then be really nice in there. Just be really nice to people, make a name for yourself, be kind of unique. Be nice to people if they're not that nice back, which might be hard to bite your tongue. But don't take any shit though. I'm not saying like do just, you know, if stuff's bad, you need to call it out. But yeah, it's just to try and get in any way you can. And then those contacts you make, even up high as producer, exec producer, email them again in later life and keep those contacts. And then it's working who you know really then. And then maybe don't be picky with what stuff you get into at first. Like I had to work on rugby. I hate rugby. Sorry to people who like rugby in the room, but I really like football. So but I worked on I did cricket as well. Oh, God. But I worked on the cricket and rugby shows just because, you know, and it turned out to be all right. You know, I just did things maybe I didn't want to do. Did the breakfast show. and then went to work in the day in a flower shop, and then did the late show at night, so didn't sleep. So that's kind of just working hard, you know, grafting a little bit. And then once you're in, it's just kind of making sure you're in there. I've got a really unique tip for recently, I think, because I tell myself this. All this AI stuff, right, is that I would say make your top line in your email or say something in your email that's definitely not been written by AI. Like maybe find something out about the person, does stalk them, but find something out the person you're emailing, or say like a joke if you can. But I just say I sometimes think, sometimes I do now, is writing bad grammar, because I don't know why I went American then for a second, but because AI writes in good grammar, right? Doesn't it? Writes in like posh, like really, you know, pronounced English and stuff. So I might say like yeah instead of you, like YA. I might say gonna instead of going to, because I know AI won't do it. Being careful who it is. If I know they're not going to like that, if it's a professional journalism job, I'm obviously not going to use slang. If this is a job in telly, I'll make a joke. I mean, you might see my emails to you. It's like personal stuff, and you from York, so it's little personal gags in there. So it's like, well, that's clearly not been written by AI, because the amount of stuff being written by AI, personal cover letters and stuff. So I think that's a really good tip. I don't know if it's worked, but I try and make those emails and those cover letters right. It's definitely not been written by AI. So that'd be a good tip. But just kind of work those contacts and be nice to people. Like honestly can get you so far. People will remember you. There's this famous story about Cilla Black. She's dead now. She is dead. We can confirm that. Everyone knows Cilla Black is? After your time now. Oh God, that makes me feel old. She did like Blind Date, Moment of Truth. What a great show. So she was massive on telly. Massive. And then she was really mean to a runner, like early on in her career. And that runner went on to be an ITV exec, sacked her off, and then she never worked again or something after that, or certainly on ITV. They say be nice to people on your way up. But that's a really good tip, I think. Be nice to people, kind of work those contacts. Be a big tip for telly, anyway.
Great advice. Just a couple quick ones from me, and then we'll open it to the audience.
Yes.
A curveball. If you could have written any other TV show, why and what would it be?
Do I have to have the skills to have written on it or not?
Oh, no.
Like, could I write it? It's just a world where I could write anything?
Whatever you want.
I'd processed Succession recently, because obviously it was the writers of Peep Show, great comedy as well, wrote that as well. Like to be able to translate comedy into drama, even though Succession is like a comedy as well. That would have been ace to write that, because it's just so much swearing, like nothing, anything goes. And the way I heard the writing process went was amazing. Like, I'm always a big believer in there's no such thing as a bad idea in a room. You should be able to say anything. And like, who came up with Naked Attraction? I always think, like, imagine the person in the ideas room who said that first and foremost would have been like, that is a mental show, and it went on to be so successful. But yeah, Succession, I think, great show. I know we should be, I said I won't be negative, but I don't think I could write that show. I think it's so good. But I would love to have written on something like that and been involved in that process. But then also Alan Partridge is a hero of mine. Maybe the US Office, because when it went to more crazy in the later series and all the peripheral characters started having main like storylines like Creed and stuff, I'd like to have been in the writers' rooms to do those kind of shows. But then Hacker Time I wrote on, which is absolutely mad. And then it's those kind of rooms where not anything goes. That would just be if you can get into a writer's room or onto a telly show when anything goes, that's the dream.
Awesome. And finally, what next for you? What's in the pipeline?
So I'm on BBC Bite Size at the moment till Christmas. We're doing stuff about media literacy in schools, which is okay. It's fine. You know, it's nice. It kind of pays well. I do 1 day a week in Media City, and then the rest is at home. It's not too exciting, but it's a nice job. It's a lovely, again, children's is a really nice place. That's really nice. Oh, it's good for mental well-being and stuff. Have Fridays off, do some yoga. All right, just sleep. But it's a really nice environment to be in, children's. And again, that was my contacts from, I worked at CBBC back in 2014 and left to teach for a bit. Then I went back to work at BBC in 2021. And that was just because somebody knew me from back in the day in exec. That's 7 years later. So, oh, Luke, you used to work there. Do you want to chat? Yep. And then I got a job from it. That's a 7-year gap there when I had to hustle to find a telly job. And then in January, I'm going to do Saturday Night Takeaway, to do some games producing on that and some casting on that. That'll be till April. Then nothing. Then I just see what's next. TV's in a bit of a bad state at the moment. I don't know if you know anyone who works in telly, but Rit and that guy before, Mark, what was it? Mark was saying it's really bad at the moment for commissioning. I was on a show that got sacked off after 4 weeks called 4 Weddings, where it was like Come Dine with Me, but for weddings. They were going to go to each of us wedding and rate it out of 10. And we were like 6 weeks in, it had been green lit, which means it's like, yeah, it's definitely going to be on telly. We budgeted, and then we got called into a meeting. It was like a movie. And it was like, oh, what's going to go on or whatever. We didn't know. And I was joking, I'm probably going to be sacked. And it was like, you've got 2 weeks and the show's been sacked off. And it was like mad because I was working with producers who'd worked in telly constantly for 12 years. And all of a sudden, it's just like, there's just no money. We're getting rid of Naked Attraction, that Greg James reality show that they wanted to be the traitors, that got sacked off. Things just went. It's a very difficult time. So I'm very lucky. So yeah, I had an interview for a Saturday Night Takeaway. I'm going to do that for 4 months. Then we'll see. Might go back to BBC. I've just got to go back and work contacts. Hopefully this Cartoon Network show will go. Then I could probably take 6 to 12 months off to write that. And that would be my first ever full-time writer's gig. I did class dismissed whilst I was working at CBC. So that would be the dream. That would be a massive milestone achieved next year. I might be doing, I've got ideas all the time. I want to do a podcast with my wife, Lauren Layfield, because we've got an idea for Summit, because there's so many couples podcasts at the moment. They're all over. Spencer and what's his wife called? Irish lass, really nice. Then there's the Buckleys have one. Everyone has one, couples, especially if they're a little bit famous. And not that I am, children's BAFTA though. But Loz is a little bit famous. Loz, because of like Innocent Men, is massive now, and she does a bit of telly. We've got an idea for a podcast, which we want to do. Not a couples one about marriage and stuff. That's been done. But we're going to do a couple of pilots potentially. So I want to do that in the new year. But I'm scared because I want to do stand-up as well. God. Does anyone do stand-up? If they did, they'd go, wee, because I've done it. But I'm really scared. I'm really. That is the most scary thing to do, right? I want to go and do it because it's a bit of a bucket list, but I'm so scared. But in the south, it's a bit nicer. Up north, you did the Frog and Bucket in Manchester, or you'd get torn apart. But in the south in London, they're a bit more like nice. There's one in Greenwich called Comedy Virgins, which is 15 like comedians. And I'd be funnier than 5 of them at least, I think. So I'm like, I think I'm going to go do it. But I don't think I ever will. That's the thing. I need some motivation to go and do it. Just cause. Just want to try it out. Because I think it'd be really thrilling. But I am so scared. Anyway, that's what's in the pipeline. Lots.
Well, let us know when you do the Manchester one. We'll all turn up and be brutal.
No,
You know what I mean?
absolutely not. I'll not. I've seen these people now, so I'll not be seeing them again. I don't want you
So
to come and join.
I'm going to pass it out to students and staff. If anyone's got any questions.
Do ask questions. Don't be like, I don't want to ask
Anything.
anything. Because I'll be honest. And yes, too.
Down here and then up there. You could do a quick tight 5 minutes now if you want to stand up.
No. I have
Hi.
some nuts.
Hi, Luke. Sorry,
Hello.
I was a bit late. The buses.
Why were you late?
Because of the buses.
Oh, okay.
2 questions. One question is, how do you start your day?
Do you want to answer that first?
Yes.
So I should be getting up and writing for a couple of hours before my day shift, which again with writing, I tell myself, but I don't do it every day, which is really bad. Again, motivation. So I either get up and I walk the dog and I'll have some breakfast and I'll either write for a couple of hours or do some errands because they take up so much of your time, life admin. Then I'll start at 9 or 10 and do my day shift on Bite Size, doing some producing. Yeah, that's it.
Second question. How long does it take you to come up with a brilliant idea for a script?
Well, it could come up instantly. I could think of any idea at any moment, as can anyone. If I think it's a real goer, it depends if I'm writing with anyone else or I'm writing on my own and how quickly I do it. If I'm really passionate about it, I'll write it quicker, obviously. But to really get to that point where I've got a treatment and a pilot, as aforementioned, what you need to have done to sell something, that could take like 2 or 3 months. Depends how the length of the script. Depends how quickly I get on it. You know, treatment you could do in a day, less. So I'd say like 2 or 3 months to maybe get it at a stage where I'm ready to maybe start sending it out. Depends how passionate about it I am. Because it might just take a back burner and then I might be like, I've seen something similar to that. I've gone off it a bit. Or my co-writers, people I'm writing with time, might not have time to do it. So yeah, good few months. And then from then, that can take another 2-3 years for something to get on telly. But sometimes could be quicker, sometimes could be slow. Good questions.
Hi, my question's a little bit double-barreled, so
Two
I'd like to
questions.
know what your favorite bits from Hacker and Dodge that you may have written, and the other barrel to that question is, what was your favorite thing about writing for Hacker and Dodge?
Are you a fan of Hacker and Dodge? Or were
I
you at
love
the time?
puppetry. I love
Really?
puppets. Yeah,
Dodge isn't as funny.
isn't he? No, it's Hacker that's the
No,
star
yeah,
of the
yeah.
show, really.
But Dodge, played by Warwick. Warwick's a puppeteer, and like, because there's only about 5 good puppeteers in the country. So when the stuff that needs puppeteering, i.e., Star Wars, the who are the little bears, Ewoks, not Enoch. Says about the penis chopped off. Our like Dark Crystal, which is on Netflix. I didn't see it, but people might have seen Dark Crystal. So when stuff needs puppeteering, they literally go to these 5 men and women, because that's all there is in the country, and they use them. But writing for Hacker, I really like doing the 4:15 Club, doing the raps, because we went into a proper studio. So Phil was like doing it not with Hacker, that'd be mental, but we recorded it in a proper studio in Manchester. And the dramas in Hacker were really fun to write. The live links in between the shows, like with Ian and Hacker, they tended to go off script quite a lot. So you're like, I've really strived to put some gags in, and you've not read them out. So that'd be quite frustrating. So those kind of dramas and those songs I wrote for Hacker were definitely my highlight. Hacker and Yonko went to Lapland. I wrote a lot of sketches for that. I didn't get to go. So they were quite nice to write because they looked beautiful, because it was with the real Santa, who's from Leeds, by the way. The actual Santa in Lapland, breaking news, is actually from Leeds, because he had a job at Castle Howard and then he got made redundant. Like Santa got made redundant. But then he got a gig in Lapland. It was like, bloody hell, dream. So yeah, probably that. What was the second question? What was it? When they said the words that I'd written would be the best thing. Because I was like, yes, I said that. So when I didn't, yeah. And it's fun working with them. I got to puppeteer sometimes as well, which is really harder than it looks. Yeah, good question.
Thanks, Luke. I'm really enjoying it. And I was wondering, is there anything about teaching that you miss?
Not much. Yeah, I did 7 years teaching. I didn't cover that because it's irrelevant. But I did 7 years teaching English. I did 5 years in Manchester and 2 years at the Grenfell School. I would say in a very, very cheesy way, it would be the kids, because kids are more fun than the adults that I taught with, because I hate adults, only part of my friends. The kids are really fun. I taught in a lot of like deprived areas, like 70, 80% pupil premium. So a lot of kids on the poverty line, a lot of drugs and gang problems. So working with the kids would probably be the thing I miss, and a bit in the classroom, because I hate all the stuff that came with teaching. And sorry if people know, people who work in the area, but you'll know teaching is a very stressful job for people who know parents or whatever. The admin that comes of it just sapped the love out of it. So I miss the kids. I don't want that to sound really weird as a lie. Don't take a soundbite of that, please. You know, especially in Leeds, Savile, etc. That it was just that the fun bits of it, but they got to a point where it was about 5% of the job. And then it was working 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. in schools. The marking was hideous for English. So yeah, I just fell out of love with it. But I would never go back. I do supply teaching in between contracts, which I have to do just to make a living. I'd like to do lecturing and older stuff, which I did back at my old university, because more mature students and stuff. But it's a shame, because without getting too political, the educational system at secondary school is just absolutely screwed, because you're just working towards exams now, and it's awful. So I know they're losing a lot of good teachers. Loads of good teachers leave the profession, probably because of the reasons that I left. So it's a shame, big time shame.
So thank you for coming today.
No problem.
So my question is really around kind of like when you've written a script, kind of, and you've given it to kind of like TV companies, and say for example the BBC. Sometimes, like, because you've touched on, sometimes the companies want to buy the show. What does that then mean for them? What implication do they have then? And plus, do you know when you're like presenting it to a TV channel, can you actually keep that? Can they actually take that on? But obviously, you it's your show and you're not selling it to them, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I do. It's hard, really hard. First of all, you're not really pitching to a channel ever as such. You're pitching to like a production company that will make that show for you. If they want a piece of the pie, it's because they think it's good. So they will want to take a percentage of like the format. And then from that could turn in, if that goes into a multi-million-pound movie franchise with merchandise, etc., they will take a cut of that because they've owned the idea from its inception. They've owned the format of the show. Because then it'll go, and it just depends how much input they have into it. But so the question is what they would own would be kind of a piece of anything. So if then they didn't want it and you had to take it to somebody else and you want to change it, they'd be like, no, you can't do that because we own a piece of it. Even if it's not the majority, they own some of it. So you need to kind of retain as much as you can. But it's just so hard when you want to get it away. You might want to sell your soul to get something away, which we did with Glass Dismissed, but then it got something and it's got me stuff, but then you've just got to stand by an idea. If they want a bit of the format, maybe that should be, something going off in your brain thinking this could be quite good. But they just want a piece of the pie because if that goes big, they'll earn money from it. Whereas really a TV company should just be if you have an idea for a show, they should just be producing it, which means casting it, finding locations, getting loads of other writers on board, the kind of logistics of it rather than the creative of the writing of it. Does that make sense? I think it is.
Cool. Oh, a couple more. Go.
Hi.
Hello.
I was just wondering how you would deal with low motivation as a writer.
I don't know. Do you know?
No, that's why I asked.
It's hard. It's so hard. Deadline is good for motivation for me. My wife's saying, do it. It'd be good. My friends or my co-writers getting something that I'm jealous of. And I'd be like, well, if I did it, I might get that. Working with other people, because then you're working with somebody else who might be more motivated than you, or at least you're in collaboration. So it's not just you having to motivate yourself. And it's good. I always seek to write with people who are not like me, diverse voices, women, people in the gay community, because maybe I can write for those kind of characters, but I think maybe I can't write for them as well because I've not experienced those perhaps hardships and so on. And I'm terrible as a straight white man. Obviously, I've had no setbacks, whereas other people have. So I think expanding who you are working with, because then they will help to motivate you. But it's a really hard question because I know I was more motivated probably at uni because I don't know if maybe I was just feeling like, I was playing hard, so I'm working hard. But now I'm kind of just normal life. It's kind of harder because life takes over as well. But just telling yourself you need to do it, getting away from your phone. Music, I love music, big like indie music fan. I like to soundtrack my day, like have some music on at certain points of the day, and that will help me write. Some writers can't write with music, but it's a really hard. I don't know if I have an answer for that, sorry, but there's a few things in there, but you need to just make yourself do it. But when people ask me this, I'm like, I need to seek help as well to help me with motivation. But yeah, working with others is good though. It's a really big tip of mine because then you're working on somebody else's timeline as well. So they might be like, right, they might give you little deadlines as well, which I find really good. So working with others is good because it's not just you in your own brain telling yourself that you are a terrible person who can't write. It might be like, let's work together. Let's meet next week. But then it'll move along quicker, That's just a tip I've taught. I need to work together with more people, I think. Yeah.
Hi. I can't swear. Sorry. Hi, Luke.
Can you
Thank
not
you
swear
for
because I've really broken that rule.
Yeah, it
Did
was.
Piers Morgan swear? He must have done.
I wasn't there, so I wouldn't know.
What?
But yeah, I'm not going to see Piers Morgan tell me what to do. Respectfully to him, I'm sure he's accomplished, but yeah,
it's all an act.
Yeah, it's a bit of a knob. But yeah. Anyways, on the topic of royalties, money. What would you say is like a reasonable percentage to ask for when it comes to like getting a cut of the royalties for something you've written?
Well, it'd take a long point to get to that point, and then I've joined a society called ALCS, who's something like who look after writers, and you don't actually get a say in what percentage of royalties you get. And I get pennies a year because it all depends on repeat fees and stuff. It would be up to your agent. I don't know what percentage they'd ask for it, how confident they are in the actual thing. So to go back to this gentleman's point, it's more about owning the format because then you'll have more like rights with it, and you'll have more ownership of it. I don't have a clue how royalties work. I think it's when you're bigger, as a bigger presenter, talent on screen, actor. I think that's when, but I think it's linked to format ownership as well, depending on how many rights you have. I don't know that much about that. That's a really rubbish, boring answer, and I wish I knew. I'm interested in that because the pennies I get for Class Dismissed, because that's the only show I have on telly that's repeated, is peanuts. So I don't know. I think you'd have to get like an agent on board, a lawyer, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if you can demand rights as a writer on something, whereas like an owner and a creator of something, you might be able to demand more royalties. Don't know on that. Look it up.
Brilliant. Well, that's it. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Luke. Round of applause.
Okay, so we've got one more session for today before tonight's film premiere, and that's coming up at 4 o'clock. Liz Cable is here delivering her session, which is immersive gaming and how to create a reality. So should be fascinating. So get yourself a drink, have a wee, and then be back for 4.